Hi there, and welcome back to Season 3 of SciVersed, a podcast all about science, popular culture, and entertainment. This podcast is for everyone, no matter if you're a court stenographer, a kindergarten teacher, or a musician. We are your hosts, Ella
and Isabel, two science communicators and Solarpunk enthusiasts, taking this podcast on a journey into hopeful futures.
Yay.
This episode, Solarpunk at nighttime.
Ooh.
We're going to be talking about something called lunarpunk, what solarpunk societies and technologies look like after the sun goes down, and even a little bit about decolonial space travel.
Oh, yes, please. But before we dive into that, it's really important that we acknowledge that this episode of SciVersed is being recorded on Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. Daura Nuna, Daura Ngunnawal, Yungu, Nanimanyin, Dunimanyin, Ngunnawal Wari, Dawa Wari, Dindi, Wangirilijin Yin. This is Ngunnawal country. Today we are all meeting together on Ngunnawal country. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the elders. And as always, we are extending those respects to all traditional custodians of the lands that you're currently listening to this podcast on. So take a moment and reflect on who those owners might be. And if you don't know, today is always a great day to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what does a solarpunk world look like at nighttime?
It's such a good question. The sun is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, it is nowhere to be seen indeed. How can solarpunk communities continue to thrive at night time if the sun's not there? And what technologies and innovations might be involved in this? So these are questions we're going to be exploring in this episode. And they all tie back to something known as lunarpunk, which I did bring up in our very first Solarpunk episode.
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah, which was the last episode of the first season of SciVersed. And lunarpunk is essentially Solarpunk's sister genre movement centered around nightlife, bioluminescence, spirituality, reflection, and introspection. A lot of people describe it as the yin to Solarpunk's yang. And I've got a quote here from the Solarpunk magazine, which describes it this way. Solarpunk is to lunarpunk as sun is to moon. Solarpunk is to lunarpunk as day is to night. Solarpunk is to lunarpunk as science and technology are to occult and spirituality. Solarpunk is to lunarpunk as solar panels are to bioluminescence. Solarpunk is to lunarpunk as community is to the individual.
Ooh.
Solarpunk is to lunarpunk as flowers are to fungi. And solarpunk is to lunarpunk as orange, red, and yellow are to black, silver, and blue. So I thought that was a nice little sort of description of
and
what
good
it
rhythm
is.
too.
Yes. As always, we will be splitting this episode into 3 key sections in classic SciVersed style.
We got to do it.
Yeah, we always do it this way.
Yep.
So the first section will be on human nature relationships at nighttime in a solarpunk world. The next one will be on sustainable technology after dark. And the last section will be on culture, community, and nightlife in a solarpunk world. So let's dive into it.
Oh, I'm so excited for this one. So we're starting off talking about human nature relationships at night in a solarpunk, lunarpunk, more progressive world, essentially.
Yes. And I kind of brought this up before. The fact that solarpunk during the day is focused on the symbol of and our relationship with the sun, whereas solarpunk at night, the lunarpunk part, is more about the symbols of and our relationships with the moon and the stars. So think the moon's influence on the tides through its gravitational pull, phases of the moon, and the seasons and celebrations centered around them.
Yeah, and one way online that I've seen the difference between solarpunk and lunarpunk articulated is that lunarpunk is more about personal connection with the environment. So not just the community and their interactions with the environment, either through technology or through the environment or through themselves, but more specifically about the individual's connection to the environment. And the individual will form part of our community, but it's, like you were saying before, it's a bit more reflective. And in this way, it's a little bit deeper and touching on that relationship you have with nature and the environment. Whereas I like to think that these descriptions kind of frame solarpunk as more broad rather than deep in this way. But, you know, they both grew from the same science fiction subgenre, and lunarpunk itself did grow from solarpunk. So when it's a sister, it's also a little sister. Yeah. And it's also still being defined. Like there's a lot on lunarpunk. And even though solarpunk itself is a growing genre, lunarpunk has even more to work out for itself. Yeah. So that's super exciting, I think. And it's a great one for today to talk about.
Yeah, I love that phrasing of referring to it as solarpunk's little sister, because it definitely is a very, very new thing in comparison to solarpunk, where people are realizing, oh, we should think about nighttime and also how we still take care of the individual person within a broader community too. And actually, I think the first ever lunarpunk anthology came out very recently too, like maybe even in the last 12 months. Oh. So I could be wrong about that.
We didn't read it for this episode.
I know. I know.
It was another one.
It was sometime between, I want to say 2023 and 2025. So very, very new. Whereas there have been like solarpunk collections and texts published before that. So
and one other thing I will say is you brought up that they're kind of yin and yang.
Yeah.
And I think there's a really good discussion we're going to have today about balance.
Yes.
And I think that's definitely, for me, one of the most promising things that lunarpunk brings to this table of sustainable and optimistic futures. But let's talk about lunarpunk and its relationship with night. Like, let's dive into that a bit more.
Yeah. The human nature relationships at nighttime. The first thing that I wanted to bring up is the fact that a lot of us currently have a lot of fears around nighttime and darkness.
Yeah.
Right? And so one reason is biological and genetic. It's something that's like a hardwired evolutionary survival mechanism. We still have from the time when we were early humans, when we were more vulnerable to predators stalking the night. And it's essentially our brain and body going, uh-oh, scary creature is coming for me and I can't see very well. I need to run and hide and protect myself.
Yeah, you're very aware of your vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And this is probably where a lot of children, you know, have that fear that some of us grow out of, some of us don't. It kind of depends where you really want to have a night light on at night to kind of act as a protective I want to say metaphor, but it isn't necessarily a metaphor. Like it is.
Yeah.
It is actually protecting you in many ways that are both biological and social. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I still sometimes feel the instinct. Like at nighttime when I've turned off the lights and I just want to run back to my bedroom because I'm scared. And like I know like rationally I'm fine, but the legacy of some of our evolutionary traits is so strong within us that it can be really hard to get over it.
Yeah, for sure.
And another reason there's fears around night and darkness is kind of on the more cultural side, but also linked to evolution in a way too. And this is especially if you're a woman or part of a minority group where you might be afraid of being attacked or taken advantage of by other humans because you don't have the means to protect yourself, and so you don't feel safe like walking down the street at nighttime if you're by yourself, and several other situations. Unfortunately, I wish the world wasn't like that, but That's how it is at the moment.
But in a solarpunk world, it wouldn't be like that.
Yes.
Or in a lunarpunk world.
So yeah, in a solarpunk world, this would be very different, and you would hope that people can feel safe going out at night and don't have to resort to crime to get by, and everyone, no matter their race, gender, background, sexuality, feels safe walking down the street at night. So in that way, that's one way that our human nature relationship with nighttime would be very different.
Yeah, I would love that. And I think an important part of the fear element right now is that your senses go into overdrive. Like you're trying to sense more of other things to make up for your lack of sight. So it's very interesting what our relationship with light and also a safer community could do for us, and how that might change our experience of night and our experience with nature. And I also wanted to touch on the fact that I've heard people talk about the connotations of the word lunar from lunarpunk. And people talk about how lunar is representative of our emotions, as well as change. Like the stages of the moon are always changing, always cyclical. And at its core, people kind of talk about how lunarpunk holds implications of feelings and movement. So I think that's an interesting thing to carry with us, because what we're talking about here in that human nature relationship is also the feeling of being scared.
Yes.
Is kind of what we're hoping will change through other mechanisms changing in the system. So I find it very interesting, and I think also very, in a way, mature that we're bringing emotions and feelings into the conversation for lunarpunk, because how you feel in a society will make it a more sustainable culture.
Yes.
And I think that's, a really wonderful element to bring in that perhaps isn't foregrounded as much as it could be.
100%, because sustainability, and we've said this in other episodes before too, sustainability isn't just about like sustainable technology. It's also about sustainability for the community, and health, including mental health and emotions, and having a healthy relationship with those things, which we talked a little bit about in our Third Places episode, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's this lovely balance we're striking with Solarpunk and Lunarpunk with, care for community, care for self, care for environment, technology, and lots and lots of care in really positive and cool ways. So I just wanted to bring that up there because I think it's really worth foregrounding in this episode also.
Yeah, 100%. So something else I wanted to talk about was if one way of having a street that's safe to walk down every night, that everybody feels safe walking down in a solarpunk world, be through using bioluminescent plants for gentle, non-polluting and low-energy lighting, which we're going to get a bit into later on.
A tease.
Yes, in the technology section.
Yeah.
And another idea I had could be more community night walks, where people gather for walks, discouraging crime through a sense of sort of collective presence and social cooperation at nighttime. And I thought this also actually creates a space for people who are night owls to thrive, and is therefore more inclusive for that group of people, because I think sometimes people who are more active at nighttime feel like they can be left out of society because so much happens during the day and there's focus of the productivity happening during the daylight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really good point. I also like how, while this accommodates night owls, a large part of Lunarpunk is also about encouraging us to consider molding ourselves more to the Earth's rhythm. Like the Earth doesn't turn off at night. Yeah. There's still a lot of life, and I think that's what the bioluminescence and the fungi kind of like symbols of Lunarpunk are trying to say, is that there's still lots going on, And if you want to be out there, there should be a beautiful, vibrant community and culture out there supporting you at that time as well.
Yeah, very true. Rather than trying to fight it, work with it, which is totally a Solarpunk thing.
Yeah, right?
So, yeah, and that will look different for different people too. So it's like rather than trying to fight your instincts of being a night owl or whatever it is, just going along with how you feel and what works best for you and creating a space that lets people do that. Totally. And that thing you were saying about
life at night.
Yeah, about life at night.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Leads into my next point about our relationship
I love this.
with nocturnal animals and organisms. So like bats, moths, fungi, mushrooms, and so on. And deep sea creatures too, because, you know, deep sea, dark, similar to nighttime, obviously in the sea.
Unreachable in a different way.
Yes. Yeah. Which a lot of us tend to find creepy or weird or uncanny because they can be a bit different.
And we don't see them very often.
And I'm thinking here also of the negative pop culture associations of those creatures with things like witches and vampires and Halloween or just evil and the bad guy. But there is some interesting technology related to these organisms that could really help with Solarpunk at nighttime. And I think might change our perspectives and relationships with them, or I hope at least.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said for understanding what you fear and why you fear it. And I think it's very interesting that for a long time culturally we've been obsessed with monsters that come out with the nighttime and darkness, and what that says about our fear of the unknown.
Yes.
And potentially, you know, maybe there will still be creature or monster stories in a lunarpunk society, but honestly, maybe not. Yeah, I think there's a long history of, you know, disfiguration being associated with monsters and non-typical behavior being associated with aliens. And it's interesting that, potentially lunarpunk could be a chance for us to shred those cultural myths that aren't serving us. Because while like the idea of them now is kind of like sanitized and fun, the fear that they're based on is potentially harmful. And I think in a lunarpunk and solarpunk world, there would be a little bit less of that.
Yeah.
So that's just a thought I wanted to throw out there. And a new positive that I found for this, and one of the reasons that I love discussing new kind of like sisters to solarpunk is that there's a lot of positivity that comes from thinking about something more. So I love that we get to do that on the spot here, as well as all the beautiful things we have planned to talk about as well. And one of the planned things I had to talk about was specifically the lunarpunk aesthetics.
Yeah.
So in keeping with this nature human theme, the lunarpunk aesthetic is a little bit darker to the green, yellow, blue of solarpunk, as you kind of mentioned at the start.
Yeah.
With a lot of rich and deep purples and blues, but also blacks and silvers, as you also mentioned. But also it's interesting that lunarpunk is also associated more with alien organic shapes like fungi, like lots of curves and winds, whereas sometimes solarpunk can be associated with both organics and rigid shapes.
Yeah.
If you think about the solarpunk flag, there's a lot of straight lines, which is an aesthetic that lunarpunk, again, sheds a little. And some people, here's a fun one.
Okay.
Here's a fun one. Some people describe the lunarpunk aesthetic as goth-like.
Okay.
Which I find really interesting given relationships between goths and punks.
Yes.
We didn't really go into it, but if you're more interested in learning more about the punk part of solarpunk, our episode on that is really interesting.
A lot of people like that episode.
And maybe we'll have to touch on it because we didn't really talk about similarities between goths and punks, but they have a lot of shared history and aesthetics in there. In many ways, they remind me of the relationship between solarpunk and lunarpunk.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see that being brought into conversations as well.
And some of the stereotypes around goths and like the particular animals that they might associate with too. And I'm thinking like the ones that I brought up before. So like bats, moths.
Worms.
Yeah.
Creepy crawlies. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting point to kind of close on when we're talking about the human-nature relationship at night. And it's crazy that even in just this first segment, we've covered so much ground in terms of what that impacts, from safety to cultural myths to aesthetics. Like there's a lot in all of this, which is really exciting. And because lunarpunk is still establishing itself, I want to watch this space. I want to know what comes next.
Yeah. Well, you know what comes next in this episode?
What comes next as well?
Technology.
Okay.
In lunarpunk.
Technology at night. Sustainable technology at night, if you will.
Yes. So the most obvious one is the biotechnology and bioluminescence.
Yeah.
Which are 100% key ones for solarpunk at nighttime. So for those who don't know, bioluminescence is a phenomenon where living organisms produce and emit light through a chemical reaction. And this happens in organisms that quote unquote glow, like fireflies, jellyfish, glowworms. Yes, that's a good one. And some fungi. And we right now can also genetically engineer plants to produce bioluminescence and create plants like one called the firefly petunia, which glows bright green, I think. And some researchers are also investigating genetically engineered bioluminescent E. coli bacteria to use in light bulbs at the moment. So these are things that are kind of being explored right now.
Yeah, they're not really science fiction.
Yeah.
Like maybe in the scale and distribution, but not in the areas that are creating them. It's really interesting. Scientists have gotten very good at splicing the bioluminescence like gene or genes. One, because there are applications kind of like in this lunarpunk world, but two, because it is so novel. Like I think something also positive to talk about that's a current brainwave is the joy and delight and wonder from seeing something glow that you don't think should glow or doesn't normally glow. So the novelty factor for bioluminescent specimens is actually quite positive to getting funding and also getting recognition for your work after you publish it. So it is kind of a common one in biological spaces. But going back to this idea of, if a solarpunk and lunarpunk community are existing at the same time, like say solarpunk is the description of it during the day, but perhaps lunarpunk covers a different side of it at night. I'd love to see solarpunk cities and communities have bioluminescent trees.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you can see in art representations of algae lamps or something similar that can light up the streets in the evening.
Yeah.
And I've also been thinking about harnessing moonlight.
Yes.
Which is something that is, at the moment associated with spirituality and rituals, but could also be a potential source of sustainable, renewable light sources.
Yeah. Oh, now that'd be an interesting one to explore. I wonder if anybody's thought about that or is looking into that. I feel like there must be some people who are.
Surely.
Because if you're already thinking about the sun, sure, like the next logical step is to be thinking about
the sun shining around the moon.
Yeah.
And this is, the concept of moonlight just goes to show too how entwined solarpunk and lunarpunk are and could continue to be.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I've got some pop culture examples that are kind of lunarpunk
technology.
Yes.
Ooh.
That show some of these ideas that we've just talked about around biotechnology and bioluminescence. And so the first one, and this one is also cited a little bit in the online discourse around lunarpunk,
Okay.
which is also very much baby at the moment. But this is one of the examples.
It's baby, but come add to it. Come over here.
Yeah. And that is Pandora in the Avatar film series.
I could see that.
Yeah. So that's where the Na'vi live. And the thing about Pandora is it's also a moon. So that's very aligned with lunarpunk.
This sounds like an industry plant.
Yeah, maybe. And Pandora is a place where also Indigenous knowledges, ecological balance, and a spiritual connection to the landscape are central to life. It's a lush, almost untouched planet where the Na'vi live in harmony with their environment, and it is very much like a glowing city with all of the bioluminescence.
Yeah, and I would say that, the thing Avatar is known for is its visual spectacle to people. And I'd say there we really get to see come through some of the delight and joy of that bioluminescence when we're experiencing that world. And I think that visual experience is so important. So it's really cool to see something that does sound very, very lunarpunk be something that visually in our like cultural, like pop culture knowledge bank, be so lunarpunk related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And another one that I've come across that people also cite is the new underground city in Matrix Revolutions.
I'm not up to date.
I've only watched that one once, so I have a very vague memory of it, but it is lunarpunk adjacent, and it's a place which also has a lot of bioluminescence, as well as advanced technology to create a sort of breathable atmosphere and artificially produced sky beneath the surface of the Earth.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, yes. This is why I say lunarpunk adjacent and not necessarily.
Like it kind of sounds nice, but like would I prefer to live there?
Yeah.
Necessary perhaps.
The other thing about it is that the city was built in cooperation by humans and machines.
Like autonomous machines?
I think so.
Ooh.
Yeah. And the two live together in harmony rather than conflict, which is different to its predecessor from earlier movies. And they apparently even have botanists bringing lush green plants back to life in a harsh and mechanical underground world. So that's cool too.
Yeah, lots of good elements in there. Wow.
Yeah, so those are sort of more bioluminescent examples, I think. Yeah. But in a similar biotech way, solarpunk communities could also use eco-friendly concrete inspired by coral, which captures carbon dioxide, and also utilize sustainable materials made from mushrooms.
Yes.
Including building materials, leather, paper, medicine, all made from
food
mushroom.
packaging.
Yeah, all of it. And these technologies are also currently under development.
Yeah.
So we are thinking about it. We're researching this as sustainable alternatives.
Mushrooms right now are really having a cultural moment, not only visually, but also like scientifically and their uses.
Yeah.
And I would say a lot more people now know about the mycelium network spread than 10 years ago. So it's really interesting to see kind of the pace that sometimes these ideas can pick up and lead us, to that more positive world.
And recently I'm thinking of how they're starting to take it a lot more seriously in mental health too. Like some of the research right now around PTSD and taking really small doses of certain mushrooms. Whereas before it was viewed as this like bad.
It was so
thing.
Taboo.
Yeah.
And taboo doesn't really allow for progress. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love to see it. We love to see it.
It is very cool. Okay, so that's bioluminescence, biotechnology. Now,
The big one.
well, I guess,
Yeah.
if you want it to be. Another technology that is associated with lunarpunk or solarpunk at night is decolonial space travel. And space travel is talked about within lunarpunk because we view space as like nighttime,
Yes.
dark, different to being in daylight, basically.
But we're in space all the time. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yeah, I know. We're on an Earth which is in outer space, so. But yes, and this section is kind of linking back to things we hinted at in our space colonization episode from season 1 and sort of building on those ideas.
So if you haven't listened to that episode, we recommend you do. But Too Long Didn't Read or Didn't Listen version of that is we were talking about the prevalence of space colonialism and colonization in board games as mechanics. And we were, I think, being appropriately critical of the values and the worldview that was projecting. And I don't know if we arrived at what a decolonial space exploration could look like. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about changing some of the language around it, but I don't know if we...
I feel like we didn't come to a solution. I feel like we were just a bit bummed out at the end of that episode.
Yeah, true. Maybe we briefly hinted at something. I don't know. But now we're going to talk more about it. Now is the opportunity to do that. And so there are some ideas around what outer space travel would look like in solarpunk worlds and this decolonial space travel. So for example, like I briefly touched on before, reframing the language, and there is discourse at the moment of people starting to say, oh, instead of space colonization, let's reframe it to think about space or celestial stewardship.
That's so good.
And so this is an idea from indigenous cultures around Earth that outer space, our planet, and humans are not separate but interconnected systems. And so obviously that's including outer space in that conversation. Whereas I think when most people think about the interconnected systems, we're thinking about the nature systems on our planet and not beyond it.
But yeah, they are all interconnected.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that these things have been interconnected for millennia, and we therefore have an obligation to care for celestial bodies and the night sky. And this sounds very solarpunk to me. And there is actually a recent conversation article about it that we'll link in the show notes for people who are interested.
Yeah. And I think a key point here is that it's not just a change of language, like that change of language in calling it space or celestial stewardship is also about reframing the way we can think. And not to get all linguistically on the pod, but the way that we word things and the words that we have in our own vocabularies actually defines how we think. So if we can change some of that language and actually allow ourselves to get out of a previous mindset and language space into a new one, that can open up more ideas or point them in a certain direction. So it's not just a token word, like those words also come with value and positionality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely. And there's a quote from the article I was talking about before that builds on what you were just saying. And the authors say, quote, "When we shift the conversation away from the human-centric logic of exploitation and empire building, we also expand who has a relationship with and a responsibility to space. We all do. In effect, we are all space citizens.
Love that.
That means space must not be left to dominant nations and tech titans alone. To realize this future, we must reclaim the narrative around outer space from powerful actors who use exclusionary language grounded in coloniality. Instead, we should move towards a more inclusive relational and sustainable ethic of stewardship. And this is my favorite line. Otherwise, we risk repeating history and launching injustices into the cosmos one rocket at a time.
Yeah.
And this kind of made me think of what is happening with artificial intelligence at the moment and bringing those injustices along into that technology because it's built on our biases and discrimination.
Yeah, and the same dominant power systems. Rather than changing or challenging them, a lot of AI systems at the moment are kind of keeping the status quo. And we know the status quo is really harmful, particularly if you're in one or multiple minority groups.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And all of this offers an alternative to the current narrative of space races and the idea around that, and private corporate space exploration, which we're seeing more and more of recently too, where space travel is only for the rich and powerful to escape the planets they've ruined or show off their status and money, and ignore the damage being done to the natural world.
If you can't take care of this world, I don't know if you should be trusted with another one.
I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, if we're then talking about like what would a Solarpunk or a lunarpunk version of space exploration, celestial stewardship look like, you probably already have to have a thriving current world.
Yes.
Before you go out.
Yes.
So I really love that idea. I'd really like to see that be true in my lifetime. I think it's possible. Let's get there.
Yeah, and there is a pop culture example of this, and it's from a book or a book series by Octavia Butler, who does come up in Solarpunk discussions a lot. She was an American science fiction and speculative fiction writer. And here specifically, I'm talking about her Earthseed book series.
Oh, yeah.
Where I haven't read it, but I'm very interested now. The main character is driven to help humanity reach the stars, but while not neglecting the planet we call home.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will raise you that we have another pop culture example of space, probably exploration rather than stewardship, done, if not right, then better than right now. And that is the wonderful world of Star Trek.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right?
How did I not think of Star Trek?
So if you've never heard of Star Trek or you don't know anything about it beyond the name, it's been described as a megatext of science fiction. It takes place largely in the future and largely on spaceships who are exploring space. And it has been described as both post-colonial and utopian. There is a lot to say on this topic. And I have been crowdsourcing ideas from my housemates. Thank you so much. Because I think the idea of Star Trek as a utopia sounds right until you think about it. And then you think about it some more and it does sound right again.
Okay, yep.
So I wanted to talk about why that is and why I wanted to get some more perspective before I put my thoughts together for this podcast, specifically on their version of post-colonial space exploration. And it's really interesting because while Star Trek itself talks actively in the episodes, both foregrounded and backgrounded, about colonialism and imperialism and not wanting to repeat mistakes, it does not present itself as perfect. And the best part for me is that during these storylines, the world and Starfleet and the characters actively progress. We can see them moving towards a more perfect version of their reality constantly. And I think it's really important that they depict struggle, then usually action, and that action normally includes learning something that challenges previously held beliefs, such as only wanting to expand to planets that don't have a form of human life, and then realizing the importance of the non-human life on that planet and the damage you can cause to it by expanding your own population there. So I think there are some really, really positive elements of Star Trek that can be brought in. Is it a utopia? Yes and no in many ways. And I think kind of what we were talking about with language before, there's a beautiful difference between exploration and expansion. It kind of asks what is the alternative, and I think we kind of touched on that a little bit. And is exploration or stewardship on its own even possible for particularly humans who do center a lot of the Star Trek stories? So I think it raises a lot of good examples and a lot of good questions about, potentially we could say it's a more punk version of being in space. But the fact that it's always having this dialogue with itself throughout decades and decades of media, I think is really interesting. So to wrap up, on where we are with technology, I think we've spoken a lot about technology at night, lunarpunk technology, and all its potential. And a big portion of where we got to, particularly in the latter half of that discussion, was that it matters how you use the technology.
Yes,
and why you use it and what you use it for.
Yeah.
As well as the beautiful aesthetic bioluminescence.
Yeah, pretty things.
Which I want to believe you couldn't use wrong, but I'm sure you probably could.
There's always ways. People just, I'm sure there's a way.
Yeah. Isabel, is it time for section 3?
It is time for section 3.
So let's move into perhaps the one I'm most excited for, which is talking about culture and spirituality at night in Solarpunk land, in lunarpunk theming. There is a saying that you can understand a culture by what happens in their nighttime. Or, alternatively, that night is where culture lives.
Ooh, tell me more.
So when we were planning this episode, that's the first thought that came to my mind, is that I wonder what we will find out about solarpunk, lunarpunk societies and cultures by investigating what happens in the evening or at night. The concept of a nighttime economy, which is culture-esque, but academics write about it, emerged in Britain in the 1990s in the context of strategies to counter deindustrialization and inner urban decline.
Oh, how interesting.
So in academia, a lot of the discussions about nighttime economy are talking about making life better for people, which solarpunk, but also common sense. And there's a paper by from Western Sydney, so in Australia, that talks about this and critiques, I think, what culturally, particularly here, is an association of nighttime culture, which is the alco leisure industry's dominance over the nighttime economy, which is many events being fueled or there being an expectation of alcohol being there.
Yeah, okay.
So that's an interesting kind of like start to where our ideas of nighttime economy and culture started from. Just last year, there was a nighttime policy accelerator that brought together 40 policymakers from global cities to talk about challenges and approaches to nighttime culture. And they discussed how nighttime culture supports youth culture, how climate can be engaged with through culture, how nighttime is a creative ecosystem. They discuss the safety aspect to nighttime culture and also how to make an inclusive, accessible, and decentralized cultural life there. And their data suggests that 97% of cities worldwide are working to support the nighttime economy. So that's a bit of a time gap, and there's a few aspects to this, and I wanted to touch on the inclusivity aspect of current policies about nighttime, and that is a huge tick for the solarpunk and lunarpunk and punk genres.
Yeah.
And also the fact that they already are thinking about a decentralized
Yes.
model to this. And when we were speaking earlier about Solarpunk technologies at night, we mentioned them both in cities and communities. So one problem I have in these papers is that they're just focusing on cities, whereas we know that culture and community and people and the environment extends far beyond that. But I do like that there's a very clear starting base here. And there's actually more than I thought when I went looking for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is more than what I would have thought too. So,
Right.
wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, so we are thinking about these things.
Yeah. And one of my favorite points I want to see if you had any opinions on was their talk about climate and culture and how the two mingle. And I think that's very interesting because that's kind of this whole season we're talking about sustainability, climate, and talking about it through the lens of pop culture because we believe that's something that is engaging and can give lots of good entry and access points to.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
Right?
I'm getting meta now. That's so true. Yeah, how we have literally used both of those things together to reach people.
Yeah.
And they are intertwined
Yes.
as well. And so it's actually not difficult to talk about those two things together.
It's something we've been doing naturally, has been
Yeah.
brought up as a strategic policy point.
Yeah.
And I think that's very interesting. And I'd love us to carry that thought about climate and culture and sustainability and culture with us throughout this section that's all about culture and spirituality.
Yes.
So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's very interesting.
Yeah,
And it will
no,
relate
that's
to
great.
everything we talk about probably ever.
Yeah. It will, just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Point number 2.
She has more to say.
I have more to say. Moving away from, that was kind of an introduction
Yes.
to culture at night. I want to talk specifically about streetlights. And
Oh.
you may be thinking, Ella, that's a technology. Why are you bringing up in the culture and spirituality section? Well, lighting the dark artificially, which is kind of what this is because the sun is away and even though they might be sustainable, it's probably enhanced by luminescence or moonlight. I want to talk about the opportunity that additional light brings. And the opportunity that I think it brings is mostly social and cultural and spiritual. So I don't know if you've read this in my notes, but I think you were going to enjoy this chat. Research by someone we know, Danny Bate,
Yes.
a PhD
Yeah.
researcher in cybernetics. His research examines the multiple roles that light plays in the larger cyber-physical system, which is to say the larger system of technology, people, and environment. So kind of pretty much everything.
Yeah.
He says light and its role as both a tool and a resource is arguably crucial to almost all complex systems on the planet in one form or another. And in a lot of his talks about his research, we hear him talk about light impacting our regulatory and internal body clocks. And also those internal mechanisms for other species too. So light impacts our non-human companions, birds, trees, nocturnal mammals.
Totally.
So in introducing more forms of light, there is a range of observable and non-observable impacts.
Yeah, and you know that thing about red light and blue light and how, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but our phone screen, for instance, is blue light. And so one of the things I remember learning in psychology is that is like the worst thing to be on if you're trying to go to sleep because blue light is waking you up.
Yeah.
Whereas if you turn it on to like, and I think most phones have this inbuilt now into like the red light mode, and it like darkens the screen, that it won't interfere as much with that natural instinct to like fall asleep.
Yeah, and you see a lot of people who are in parts of the world that experience, darkness for like 100 days because of where it's positioned. buying sunlight lamps that mimic that light pattern so that your body
your brain,
doesn't have to adjust as much to the natural reality. So in playing with light, we're playing with a lot of things. You know, one is a point we brought up earlier, safety. Another one now is your internal regulation systems. So I love how his work explicitly talks about technologies ongoing ramifications everywhere, not just for us, but also for animals, plants, the fungi themselves. Super interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So there's a lot I could say. We'll put some links. We'll give you some further reading for that because I don't want to take over this whole episode with that, though I could.
I know you could.
Though I could. Instead, we'll move on to talking about nightlife and festivals and the culture around them.
Yes. This was something that when we were planning this episode, we had a brief chat about too. And I was sort of thinking about what festivals at nighttime would look like in Solarpunk worlds.
Yeah.
And I think that would be more lantern festivals, more night tours, including like cave tours.
I would love that.
Farmers markets at nighttime. That'd be pretty cool too. And then Ella and I started having this conversation about Halloween.
Okay. Go on.
So, and we were like, Halloween, third place. Is it a third place?
Is Halloween a temporal third place?
So I don't know. I think, it's interesting, right? Because if you think about the trick-or-treating aspect of Halloween, where almost an entire street becomes a third place for people to gather. So in that way, it is. But then I was also thinking about how maybe it's not super lunarpunk or solarpunk. Oh, I mean, the other thing is it's also nighttime focused too, obviously. But maybe not super lunarpunk or solarpunk focused because of the trick-or-treating part where you're knocking on people's doors and saying,
give me something.
Give me something, and if you don't, I'm going to egg your house. So, like the trick aspect, right?
I think the trick is you just tell a bad joke. That's how I've been trick-or-treating.
That's much better. And that is what I've done.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, I'm glad you're not admitting to egging a house on a podcast.
I've never done that. I can promise you I never have. But I'm thinking about movies and how they sort of portray Halloween too. And it's like, if you don't give me the candy, I'm now going to ruin your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about Halloween and lunarpunk?
The thing for me that is most compelling is the complete attitude and vibe switch that roads become safe for families to walk on, for kids to take up space, for teenagers, you're on the cusp, but you're still allowed to exist and are encouraged in that space. You're encouraged to put in effort. You're encouraged to hang out with friends, to speak to your neighbors, to embrace the walkable aspects of your community. So I think there are a lot of aspects to it that would, turn the needle towards a more solarpunk event. But it's one night a year. It's very, very temporary. There's like a limited window when you're allowed to do it.
Yeah. Well, actually, now I'm thinking a bit more about it too, and it is linked to that thing you were saying about lunarpunk and being more in tune with the Earth's rhythms, because Halloween in its original form was about a certain time during autumn, like during the season. So in that way it is.
Yeah, and in paganism, it relates to like spirituality and culture and in the All Hallows Eve, and followed by like All Saints Day, like the evil spirits, the nicer spirits.
Yeah.
Is it completely devoid from that now in our current capitalistic society? Maybe, but the really nice aspect, I think, is the community, which is families taking time, if it's a school night, if it's a weekend, whichever, to go out and to be in their community. And normally you do it like on your own street. Yeah. I think mixed. Mixed is my final conclusion.
Yeah. Mixed, but I think an interesting one to talk about.
Yeah,
and to think
absolutely.
about sort of nighttime festivals and nighttime holidays.
Yeah.
And ways we could be exploring that more in a solarpunk, lunarpunk world.
100%.
Right. Moving now more into the spirituality elements.
Yes.
Which in a solarpunk and lunarpunk world is not necessarily about religion. It can be for some people.
But it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. And in most cases, it's actually more about your connection with nature. And at nighttime, since this is an episode about solarpunk at night, your relationship with nocturnal nature.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to say here that lots of science-inclined people are also spiritual.
Yes.
And let's disregard any binary that might be in our heads about that. And we kind of covered this a little bit in our dives into ancient science history.
Yes.
In earlier episodes last season, maybe even in season 1. And historically, there have been really big ties between science and religion. And these have been way bigger than we see now, which is almost nothing. They kind of seem to not want to coexist with each other. But eco-spiritualism, which is how some people describe the spirituality that is associated with lunarpunk, this might be a nice way to bridge the two again. And I wanted to talk a little bit about cultures that use the stars for storytelling.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded of seeing researcher and Gamilaroi man Peter Swanton talk at a panel on the future of our skies. It was a really good panel. And Peter was telling us that for tens of thousands of years, his family have been telling stories of the sky. These stories that are embedded with navigational tools, burial lore, natural lore, scientific information, patterns of animal behavior, and so much more. And stories that have been kept alive, passed down through generations, probably looking up at the stars as they're telling these stories. And these stories are right now at risk of being erased because of light pollution.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to think of where culture is stored, how stories are passed down, the infrastructure that both allows them but also might stop them from happening, and that relationship between science and spirituality. And like Peter, Danny Bate, the researcher who I brought up before, he was at the same event. Danny was talking about how his family and culture are also culturally linked to the stars, that generations of fishermen from the Pacific Islands have used these stars to navigate. And he says, quote, "We've built cultures and rituals around light. We've built languages and communication to enlighten someone or to light someone up."
Oh,
which is really beautiful.
That's beautiful.
And it's a really great example about how culture, nature, spirituality, science, technology, all connected. They all come in at the same time. So whenever we're talking about introducing or changing things, again, thinking about the whole system that they are a part of. Yeah. And I think that leads into the thought you wanted to close this one with.
Yes. I thought that I had that I think is sort of the perfect way of ending the main section of this episode. And that is the idea that the evening is also a time for reflection and for rest. When things are quieter and calmer, it's the end of the day. And so that also means it's a time when there's more space for individuality and spending time with yourself. There's more of a sense of solitude away from community for those who want it or need it.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people.
The expectation is gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's less stress. You have time to sort of sit with yourself and reflect on your day. And I thought that was just a really nice way of wrapping up
Our chats on culture and spirituality.
Yeah. And I think that is also something that would be more there would be more space for that in a solarpunk, lunarpunk world too. Because at the moment, things like your job or other stresses still chase you into the nighttime, and there is some unhealthy expectations about wanting you to continue to get all those things done, even though it's the end of the day and there's no sunlight left, and you need to like eat something and spend time with your family and friends. Yeah, and I think it just would be very different in a solarpunk world.
Yeah, and I definitely welcome that.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that future.
Yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful episode we've just weaved together. I hope all of our listeners enjoyed that, and maybe you're feeling reflective about your own nighttime practices. But just for a minute, holding everything we've just had from that episode, we're going to dive into some good news stories to wrap up this podcast.
Yes.
So, my good news bit is local again, homegrown Australian news.
Love it.
And the good news story is the Australian creative win against AI scrapability. So if you don't know, recently AI systems have been threatening your ownership of your own work, particularly in the creative industry, which includes things like this podcast or a book that someone's taken 3 years to write and had a whole editorial team work through them, or a musician's entire backlog. So Australian creatives are kind of seeing all of the media that AI, particularly chatbots, have currently drawn from, and we're really worried about their stuff that has been scraped and the future of their protections. So they did something that is very cool, very punk, very community, and they banded together and they came to the Australian government and said, let's not let this happen. We know big tech are asking you to let you give them our stuff for free.
Yeah.
And no thank you. And this week, fresh off the press, it won't be as fresh by the time this episode comes off, but just know that right now, this week, the government has definitively ruled out introducing a copyright exemption for artificial intelligence companies training their models on specifically Australian creative works. And this is great. We've stopped free reign. We've said, yes, our copyright laws are still in place, which is really important. I think these copyright laws are due for a refresh anyway because of the current technology sector. But this worked because people got together. And it's really significant. Australian singer Holly Rankin, who you might know as Jack River, she said that this basically means the government is saying creatives and artists should be paid for their work and it should be licensed correctly in the age of AI. And it's crazy to think that this could have not been recognized because that makes complete sense. But it's a really, really big win. Yeah. And the Australian Recording Industry Association's chief executive, Annabelle Hurd, says it's a win for creativity and Australian culture, including First Nations culture.
Yeah.
But it's also a win for common sense.
Yeah.
Girl summed that up perfectly. I'm really happy about this, and I would like to see more things like this in the future. I love that it's Australian news. I love that it's specifically related to the creative industry.
Yeah.
I think this is a really positive first step of hopefully many. So that's my good news for this week.
Yeah, that one's really great.
Yeah.
Oh, how exciting for creatives in Australia.
Yeah.
Or maybe just a relief. Less
just
exciting,
a relief.
just a relief.
Again, it is common sense, but a win is still a win.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Isabel, you're talking about a win.
I am talking about a big win.
Tell me about the big win.
Mine is in the climate space and renewable technology space. And this is actually updated news that builds on Ella's good news piece from episode 1 this season.
My, how things have changed.
Yes, they just keep getting better and better, you know?
I love this life.
So you mentioned, Ella, that in 2024, 40% of global electricity was clean energy.
Yep.
Which was the highest year on record since the 1940s.
Crazy, but amazing.
It is. And that solar is the quickest growing source.
That is what I said.
Yeah. Well, I have even better news for everyone. So in September 2025, very, very recent, for the first time on record, renewable energy sources generated more power than coal globally.
Woohoo!
Plus,
Yeah.
solar and wind power generation outpaced the rise in electricity demand so far this year, meeting 109% of the demand change, and solar alone met 83% of the demand.
That's huge.
I know.
Wow.
So definitely linked to the thing you were saying about solar growing rapidly and being used more and more. Also, most solar generation is now in lower income countries, many of which have seen explosive growth in recent years because of massive reductions in cost. So solar has seen prices fall by over 99%.
That's huge. That's so huge.
I know, it's massive, since 1975, and it's now so cheap that large markets for solar can emerge in a country in the space of a single year, especially where grid electricity is expensive and unreliable. So that's pretty amazing news.
That is pretty amazing. If you think about it, that's a year to have a 10% market share increase for the renewable sector. And that is so rapid, I can't even wrap my head around it. But when we're thinking about, you know, this Solarpunk future, we're on our way. Like, look at us getting there in real time. How amazing that this is the future we're building together.
Yeah.
Oh, the good news. The good news has entered my brain and is making me happy.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect state, I think, to wrap up this.
I think it is.
This episode.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up with some questions for our audience. So we've spoken about a lot of different aspects of lunarpunk today, but also solarpunk at night. So a great question for our audience is, what do you think a solarpunk evening will look like?
What would you like to see at nighttime in a solarpunk, lunarpunk world? What sort of festivals, what sort of markets, what sort of technology?
Yeah. And what aspect of lunarpunk and solarpunk at night did we touch on today that makes you most excited, or maybe makes you feel most seen? Or if you have examples that we didn't bring up, we'd love to hear those too.
Yes, totally. Let us know on our socials at @sci_burst on most social media platforms or via our Gmail. And as always, stay nerdy, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, enjoy your evening.